Welcome to the Texas Values Report, brought to you with a special segment by Texas Values Action today. And that's for good reason, because we're going to talk a lot about elections. If you're not familiar with Texas Values Action, but this is the advocacy arm of Texas Values. This is where we do work, where we do unlimited lobbying, we endorse candidates, and do a lot of work related to elections. And there was a big election last night, in case you're not aware. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those election results, maybe make some predictions, talk about some other things coming on that are related to elections later this week, but are often in the coming months. But we're going to look back quite a bit and maybe figure out how some of these races got to where they were we surprised, were you surprised, and sort through some of that. And the numbers aren't even all in. All right, there's still some votes that are still being counted. But I'm glad that I'm not going to have this conversation by myself, because there's somebody that is going to be our guest today that knows a lot more about elections than I do. Abraham George is the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas and been doing a great job in that role for a year or so and getting settled in. I guess maybe this is his first midterm election season to have under his belt as chairman. But has really been active in our type of values and work for quite some time. Originally born in India, made his way to the United States at a young age, really living the American dream. And at one point, it was the Obama administration that got his attention even more and concern and really pushed on him to move into the type of work he does today, but at a lower level, and then eventually making himself into a leader of one of the biggest states. I think the Republican Party of Texas State Convention is the largest event of its type in the country, but has also been someone who knows what it takes to get elected and the importance of the primary elections, not just what happens in November, but picking the right candidates and leading a great organization to create an environment where there are more Republican voters. As a matter of fact, during your time as chair last year when President Trump was elected for the second time, not necessarily reelected, probably one of the biggest landslides we've seen in quite a while, and a lot of numbers in a lot of counties flipped to Republican during that race. Abraham George, welcome back to the Texas Values Report.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me today.
You bet. Your mic sounds nicer to mine. Do you hear that? It's like a silky smooth sound he's got, Ashley.
I'm going to go with that's my voice. But
yeah. It was a little bit of that, too. We'll have to check out.
I've got a great sound engineer here, so he makes it happen.
We got to check out some of your equipment over there. Well, listen, I didn't go to sleep terribly late because I'm not on the ballot. You were not on the ballot last night. But a lot of races that we're invested in, and I think overall for yourself, interested in the health of the Republican Party. What are the candidates? Who are the candidates that are going to emerge? What are the issues that are talking about? Doesn't mean we couldn't talk about Democrats too in this segment. They had some interesting races too, but I do think people, there weren't a lot of surprises last night, but there were a couple of big ones, a couple of interesting ones that maybe people could have seen coming, but until it actually happens, it's uncertain. The U.S. Senate race is probably the biggest one nationally. I think the Attorney General's race got a lot of attention and is going to continue to get more. And I think in many ways at a state level, it's the most important race that's going to a runoff. But I do think the national media talked a lot about election results. It was interesting to see their interest in Texas. There could be some additional congressional seats that Republicans pick up. But how are you feeling today? Less than 24 hours, 12 hours after the polls closing. What are sort of your immediate reflections of the election results and just how things are going for Republicans in the state of Texas?
Well, Jonathan, I'll be honest. At the beginning of the cycle with the early voting, everyone was concerned. Okay, why is Democrats outperforming in showing up to Republicans? And towards the end of the cycle, we started to see, okay, there's more Republicans showing up, and honestly, a lot of Republicans just don't show up on early voting. They'll wait for the last day. They will wait for the election day itself. So. We still got a little bit less people to show up than the Democrats, but ultimately it didn't become a major issue. One of the upsets that I think was on the Democrat side, where Jasmine Crockett actually lost to the fake preacher Tyler Rico, which is going to be an interesting race for us, because I don't know if you know Josh Howerton. He's a great preacher. I don't know him personally. I listen to his podcast a lot. And he had a response video this morning, and he basically put it out there saying, who is James Tallarico? Like, what kind of person this is, and why is he using Bible to support abortion, to support women, men in women's bathrooms, support open borders, all of the things that Democrat Party does and wants to. He is using Bible to make arguments about it. So Josh Howerton put out a great video, and I thought it was amazing. It's about 35, 40 minutes. I have no connection to him, but he did a great job in doing that. So on our side, we had a couple of major committee chairs lost their races. Stan Kitzman and Cecil Bell. Yep. They had some couple of they're powerful members of Texas House to more conservative or more grassroots people, I would say. Dan Crenshaw lost his seat to Steve Toth, both of our a good friend of both of ours, and a very conservative member of Texas legislature. So then obviously the Senate race is the one everyone's talking about. But I think almost everyone in Texas expected to have a runoff between Ken Paxton and John Cornyn. So that's going to be, how do we get there? I saw President put out a tweet recently, or Truth Social. That's going to be interesting. If he does that, he's going to make an endorsement, ask the other candidate to step out from the race. I don't know how that's going to work.
That is fascinating, isn't it? That he didn't just say that he's going to decide on a candidate endorse. He's going to suggest, recommend, I forget which exact word he used to describe his views, but essentially suggest or ask the other candidate to step out of the race and let Republicans unite for November. I'm not sure that it's going to turn out that way. You've got two candidates who feel pretty strong about themselves and have got a track record to stand on that suggests they're likely to say, we'll let the voters sort this out, Mr. President. But I don't know. Well, I'm not in control of their campaigns. Who knows? But I do think it was interesting to see him do that. The guy's a master at getting more interest and attention. We're continuing to talk about him. So who knows? That might have been part of it. But it certainly has made for interesting conversation and, predictions or reflections. Will that be this week? Will it be tomorrow? Will he come back and go through the Whataburger? Maybe he'll go through the drive-thru of Whataburger this time and make that, endorsement announcement. And we're going to touch on that in a minute. You were with the president last week in Corpus Christi. Real quick, though. Closed primaries, because we think about moving towards the runoff elections, which are the last week and a half or so of May, or close to the end of May. In just about 2 months, early voting, a little over 2 months, early voting will start, I think on May 18th is a Monday. Nonetheless, that's coming up pretty soon. And maybe some of the races, the Democrats have been resolved. Maybe they're not going to have a lot of runoffs. I'm already seeing people suggesting there are Democrats out there that are going to try to vote in the Republican primary to maybe have Republicans end up with a more liberal candidate and so on. What are closed primaries? Let's start with the basics.
Well, closed primaries Texas is open primaries, which means anybody can just show up to either Democrat or the Republican side and say, I want to be part of the Republican nomination process this time. And that also allows anybody to run on any of the ballots as well. So let's just say Barack Obama decides to move to Texas and want to run for governor of Texas. And he said, well, I'm running as a Republican. There is nothing in the party's mechanism or at the state level on the law that stops him from filing as a Republican. Obviously, he's going to lose, but that's the issue we currently have. The First Amendment gives us the right to associate with people who we think are Republicans. And our way of saying that is you register as a Republican, just like 20 some other states have it. Florida does, California does, many of the states do. You either a Republican or you're a Democrat or an independent, whatever you want. But if you say you are a Democrat, you don't get to choose our nominee. What Democrats usually do in Texas is they know they're not going to win their candidate is not going to win in a statewide race or sometimes in local races. So they will go to the Republican primary and choose the most moderate candidate. So when it comes down to real hardcore issues at the Texas legislature or in the U.S. Congress, these moderate Republicans will say, well, I don't want to I don't want to upset a lot of
or
my
maybe even
constituents.
this. They might try to push the votes towards a Republican nominee that they think the Democrat has a better chance of beating in November, whether or not that's the case. But so let's back up for a second, though. Well, let me ask this: if we wanted closed primaries in Texas, what's the process for us to have them? Just to be simplistic about it.
Well, the easiest one that we asked the Secretary of State is, can we just use the people who showed up in the last primary? And they're all considered Republicans. Anyone who registers after that, they have to register one way or the other. It didn't happen. Right now, what we're asking is we're asking the people to start by saying, hey, I'm a Republican. I'm going to cast my ballot. It's an automatic registration. Until you change, you're Republican. Until you change from a Democrat to Republican. So it's very simple. It's not hard to do. The other option is to have a clean voter roll from the beginning. I've been suggesting that since I got into politics. There's so many flaws in our voter registration list. There's so many dead people, so many people who are registered multiple times. There's just so much mess in that the poll books itself. So the other option is to have a clean poll book
I guess
starting the registration.
We're talking with Abraham George, the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, some election results reflections, but also a little bit look forward and the issue of closed primaries. I'm thinking also of logistics. Is it something that it sounds like you're saying the Secretary of State could do something? Is it a law we vote on? What are some of the other pieces in place? And part of the reason I'm wondering is in the short term, is there something legitimately that could happen between now and the May runoff to close primaries? And I guess it wouldn't just be for Republicans. Would it be for both parties? Or do both parties get to decide if they want to handle it differently?
Well, both parties get to decide however they want to handle it, because we both are private organizations. There is a lawsuit. We filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas to say we want closed primaries. And the lawsuit is in the federal court. We haven't had a hearing yet. It's been in court process for the last few months.
And what's the necessity for the lawsuit? Is there someone that's restricting the Republican Party of Texas from having closed primaries, or is there a role that the Secretary of State has to play that that office is not complying with?
Yeah, the legislator is. So the state law says we have an open primary. So in the 89th session, Mace Middleton filed a bill that said, go ahead and close the primaries. And we had Briscoe Kane and a few others filed from the other side, from the House side. And it just didn't even get a committee hearing. So it didn't go anywhere. We currently have open primaries as part of the state law. So the Secretary of State is trying to defend the state law while we are trying to say we have a constitutional right to have closed primaries. So that's the battle in the court system today.
So hypothetically, if you will, or that it's possible there could be a court ruling that allows the Republican Party of Texas, and it would seem unlikely, I guess, a short amount of time, but it's possible that could happen between now, or if there was a ruling soon, would that create an opportunity or situation where there could be a closed primary for the runoff election in May?
Oh, 100%. If the court says go ahead and have the closed primaries and orders the Secretary of State to go ahead and have a closed primaries, we could definitely have a closed primary runoff.
And where's the case right now? Is it before the Texas Supreme Court?
No, it's in the federal court.
Okay.
So it's in the the district court. Yeah.
Okay, we'll watch and see if there's some activity on that. But I do think there's been a lot more talk about it. So I think an opportunity for people to learn, but also think about, hey, what are those things that we could do, or where are we in the process? If people wanted to play a role, obviously next legislative session's a long way away. That would be too late for November or the May runoffs. But if the court makes a decision, something could happen a lot sooner. And by the way, does it? And I imagine you know this, but does it reset the clock for registration? Like, in other words, if you had someone that recently turned 18 and wanted to register to vote for the May runoff election. As long as they do that in 30 days before the election date, how does that work?
We're asking for 90 days, but at this point, I mean, if it is for between the primary election and the runoff, it could be 30 days,
Okay.
right?
That's just the current status of the law. I'm just curious, just sort of a housekeeping measure for people thinking about, oh, I didn't vote. Not that they're trying to trip up the system, but for whatever reason, they didn't vote in March, but they want to participate in the runoff. All right, let's talk about a couple of races, okay? Probably more of an interesting topic for people that, aren't in the weeds on some of the stuff that we are, but those issues are important. The close primary issue, I think, is going to continue to be an issue of importance. Let's start with, I believe you could call it the top of the ticket, the U.S. Senate race. A lot of people predicted on the Republican side, and where's my sheet? Ashley, did you leave me a sheet with some of the Democrats and their results? Oh, is this up here? Okay, I got it. Oh no, this is okay. Oh, I see. This has both of them. But top of the ticket on the Republican side, Cornyn has been the incumbent U.S. Senator for Texas, I don't know how long, 20-plus years. I don't know if it's been that long. How many is it?
Four terms.
Four terms, right?
Years,
so 6-year terms, 24 years, whatever the math is, and that number. He's been there for a long time, pretty well entrenched, and so on. So you could imagine, we could all sort of guess, estimate. It'd be hard to beat him, right? I mean, it's fair to, whatever people think about his record, I think that's likely the case. So Ken Paxton, our current Attorney General, who's made a pretty good name and has a track record of success on a lot of Republican and conservative issues, is obviously a strong candidate, comes in. But there was some thinking that Ken may have had that Attorney General Paxton may have had the lead. And so I view this, I'm curious what you think. My view was not a surprise that two of them are in the runoff. I think if anyone has to be the most appointed, it's got to be Wesley Hunt. I don't think his numbers were terrible, but I do think, his expectation was he was going to get more than 20%, and I don't think he got quite close to that. But, not a surprise that Paxton and Cornyn are in the runoff. But I think if, both of them have to be disappointed, Paxton and Cornyn, that neither one of them got 50, and now there's going to be a 50 plus, and there's going to be a runoff. But I think it's a little bit more of a disappointment for Cornyn, considering he is the incumbent, right? And that now he's been pushed to a runoff. And I'm not saying whether you like one or the other. I'm just saying, if you sort of step back, I mean, how would you describe the outcome yesterday in that race?
Well, a sitting senator who has the stature of John Cornyn in D.C.
That's the word I was looking for, by the way. Stature. There you go.
It's amazing to have two people run against him. That itself is, like serious candidates. There are people run to be on the ballot all the time, but serious candidates to go and say, well, I'm going to run against you. And A.G. Paxton and also Congressman Wesley Hunt, both are serious candidates, in my opinion. People like him. That itself is a bad thing. Then to go into a runoff election, that's even worse. Then I think most likely most of the Wesley Hunt's people are going to be supporting Paxton. Their messaging is somewhat aligned. Their track record is somewhat aligned. In Texas, as you know, John Cornyn is considered more moderate than Ken Paxton or Wesley Hunt. So if those two coalitions come together, it's a serious problem for Senator Paxton, who spent, I believe, closer to $70 million between him and all the PACs versus like $5 million for Ken Paxton. And I think Wesley Hunt spent about $13 or $14 million.
Some big numbers.
So huge numbers, right? Huge numbers. This is going to be a huge fight to the runoff. And the runoff, the population, the demographic is not the same as the primary people. These are the people who know there is a runoff. They're going to show up to it. They've kind of picked out their candidate up front anyway. There's not going to be a lot of persuasion ads and things like that you can do to get people to flip once they cast their ballot for either John Cornyn or for Ken Paxton in the primaries. So now you're asking for people who hasn't made that choice in the primaries. Those people are hard to come back anyway. Just to get them to show up, they didn't even show up for the primary election. Now you're trying to get them to the runoff election. It's a really tough race, which is why I think President Trump is trying to get involved in it.
Yeah, I mean, look, will that be the wild card that's sort of the deciding factor? It certainly will be a factor. If he does endorse and ask the other candidate to step out of the race, that's going to be a big deal. There are a lot of other notable figures in our state that have not endorsed in that race. I don't think the governor has, or the lieutenant governor. I mean, so there's some other people out there that could jump in. They're probably less likely to, but we'll see. But maybe some other folks that did not get involved in this race. Disclosure, Texas Values Action had endorsed Ken Paxton initially, but we withdrew our endorsement last summer with some concerns about his character, some of the things that was alleged about his personal life, and our sitting senator, his wife, Angela Paxton. So we're not involved in the race. We didn't endorse anyone ultimately as the race went to the ballot. I doubt that's going to change for us. I think this is an issue that is more of an individual decision too. I mean, people may be swayed by the president or other organizations that they follow and support. But we'll see how it plays out. Okay, and I know I've got you for several minutes already, so I want to catch another race, though. But the Senate race can be real interesting. We'll find out what President Trump says. I don't know. Will it be this week? We're going to be on pins and needles. All right, Attorney General's race, okay? This is probably the race that is the most significant and has the most impact on a lot of areas of other state government. That is going to a runoff. I think there's a Railroad Commission race and a couple other races going to a runoff and that are statewide. But I think this is probably the biggest one for the state of Texas when you think about the impact and so on. You've got Mays Middleton, who comes out first, which I think was a surprise and not what a lot of people predicted, with a healthy edge on Chip Roy, maybe 8.5 points. And, Aaron Wrights and Joan Huffman, who's, they've had some good work that they've done, a notable place that they ended up 15%. What was your thought coming out of that race and how it turned out?
Well, I wasn't expecting Mace Middleton to have that much of a lead over Chip Roy. I'll be honest with you. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, Mace did his job. The campaign did a good job of that, right? Messaging, getting people out to vote, all of that good stuff. Both Mace Middleton and Chip Roy, for you and me, they're close friends. Mace especially because we work in the Texas legislature a lot more than in Congress, you and I. So, all the bills that we work on, we talk to these people. So Mace been amazing when it comes to a lot of these bills, like earlier I mentioned on close primaries. So, but the runoff election, AG's race is going to be like a crazy race because that position holds a lot of power in Texas. You can pass all the laws in the world, but if the AG is not out there fighting to make sure all of those laws are processed properly and it's actually being followed by all the district attorneys who are on the other side, that place is where we actually get things done. So we need a real fighter there. We need to have a good person there. Good thing about Chip Roy and Mace Middleton is when they come to an office, I think they're fighters. They're going to do the right thing. They're going to go. So Texas have really good choice in picking the right candidate. It either way will be great. So it will be a race to watch. And Mace has a lot more money than Chip do, I think.
No, it'll definitely be interesting to watch too, and you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what we talk a lot about, and I think the left sometimes is hoping and counting on that these laws won't actually get enforced. They do everything they can to defeat them in the legislative process, even though Republicans control the Senate and the House, and if they're the left's not successful in stopping those laws from getting passed and signed by the governor, they'll try to weigh us down and tie things up in court, and hoping that the Attorney General's office won't fight, or they'll give up eventually, or be spread too thin, whatever the case may be. So you got to have somebody who's rock solid. Disclosure, Texas Values Action has endorsed Mays Middleton. We jumped in very early, if you will, July of last year. Folks may remember Chip and Aaron Wrights got in a little bit later. I think Joan Huffman was probably not too long after Mays Middleton. But now that race comes down to two people. Will Aaron Wrights jump in and endorse someone? Will Joan Huffman? That's going to be interesting. Will the president get involved in that race? Some of our other state leaders and other organizations. Going to be interesting to see. Okay, we're going to run out of time if I don't get to one other thing. The propositions on the ballot, I didn't look at the final numbers, but I think the Republican Party of Texas propositions all passed pretty significantly.
Yeah, everything got more than 80%, I believe. The one that the highest number was, is the Proposition 10, which is we should ban Sharia law in Texas. We got about 95% of the people.
Who are those 5%?
I know that's what I was thinking. Who are the 5% who said we need Sharia law?
They didn't understand the wording. That's probably what it was.
Probably the case. Or we need close primaries. I don't know which one it is, but there's about 100,000 people who said no on that proposition, which I thought we would win. We would get like 99.99% on that, but 95% is not bad. I believe Governor Abbott made a statement today saying that 95% of Texans, Republicans, want to stop Sharia law in Texas, and we're going to do it.
I saw that.
100% chance. Yeah.
No, I saw. Okay, a couple of the notables. Don Huffines wins the comptroller's nomination, the Republican comptroller's nomination, pretty significantly. No runoff. You got two other strong candidates in that race. Kelly Hancock, who was the sitting comptroller recently, former state senator. You had Christy Craddock, who's been statewide office holder for a number of years. And I don't think it was a shock, but I think there was some thinking, it'd probably go to a runoff. Maybe Don, really has an impressive election. But boy, I don't remember what the final numbers were. I think he was at 56, 57%, but quite a bit higher than anyone else. And he clinches it. I think it was a big story last night.
Yeah, absolutely. Controller's race is a lot of people don't understand what a controller does, which is one of the reasons why controllers usually kind of stay under the radar. But it's a very powerful position in Texas. They control the purse, basically. And when it comes down to Don's race, the beginning, I thought it was going to be a runoff. I think the campaign thought it was going to be a runoff too, until last night when they saw that. I was very surprised. And the other one was Sid Miller's race.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. That was, and it looked like Sid might hang in there. When the results were coming in, he got that endorsement from Trump. Late, if you will, later in the process. But those numbers, for Nate Sheets were hard to ignore and were enough for him to get the nomination.
Yeah, he's not. Nate Sheets is not a politician, and I've known him for a few years, but he's the honey guy, right? He's a businessman and nature Nates and all of that good stuff. But he supported Sid, and then to go run against him and to have such an upsetting record on the voting is just amazing. So,
well, and in that race, the governor got involved, which I think was maybe a surprise to some. I know Sid Miller and the governor have had some friction over the past couple of years, but still, for the governor to come in and endorse an incumbent against an incumbent statewide elected official, certainly notable, and I think that was a factor. Okay, let's talk about the other side for just a second before we lose you. The Democrats had some elections too. They've chosen in the U.S. Senate race James Tallarico. You talked a little bit about that when we were starting. And then Attorney General, I think they're going to a runoff. It looks like Nathan Johnson, who is the current state senator, and Joe Jaworski, I think. And then let me see what they're doing for governor. I think Gina Hinojosa clinched that. Okay, so I saw Democrats some people were upset, I don't know, racial politics about why Jasmine Crockett didn't win, but that's done. All right, you think a little bit towards November, now you've got the Democrats, top of the ticket for them is James Tallarico. What does that tell you about the Democrats?
Be honest with you, I didn't really care about which one's going to win, but I was talking to some of the staff here, and I said the problem if Jasmine Crockett wins is there may be an Obama effect. The Black Americans who are independents will say, well, I'm going to support the lady because she's Black. I was a little concerned about that, be honest with you. But with James Tallarico, I think most Black Americans are just going to go with policy at this point and say, yeah, I don't like the Democrats. I'm gonna go with the Republicans. So, which is actually a good thing for us. We just need to figure out a way to curtail this guy from using Bible to push abortion. It's just
look. He's making national news, and not for good reasons, in my opinion. Right. He thinks it is. It certainly appears. You can imagine how these things are. That he's enjoying the interest and attention, but he keeps saying stuff that people are like, "What? What did he say?" And so I think he's got a lot to learn as a politician. Whereas Gina Hinojosa, who's going to have her hands full running against Governor Abbott, you haven't really seen a lot of headline grabbing comments that she made, which is probably smart on her part. She's going to have, her work cut out for her though to try to win. But yeah, I mean, look, that's going to be top of the ticket, right? And it's important for people to understand some voter fatigue sometimes. When you think about that, you don't have the president at the top. In this circumstance, you're going to have a race that's, competitive at the top of the ticket. That's going to be the U.S. Senate race. That's a Republican. And it's, going to be, I don't know, towards the end of page 1 or maybe page 2, you start getting to the governor's race and some statewides. That can, am I right? That can be a little bit of a factor?
It is. In Harris County, I was told Governor Abbott's name was on the second page.
Yeah.
So, you can see, it will be a lot less people on the ballot. So, I can see it's still on the first page, but some counties you have like 60 pages of ballot, and like Harris County, for example, so which is crazy. After like 5-6 pages, people will be like, I'm done. Let me cast this, and I'm going to go home, which is a problem. A couple of things before I leave, I want to mention is the grassroots had an amazing night especially with SBOE last night, and Criminal Court of Appeals and things like that. So. There is a lot of, I'm just so proud of our people to actually do the homework and say, I'm supporting this guy. No, I'm not supporting this guy. It's just whatever it is, but they did the work to get there. So you guys did an amazing job of pushing candidates and putting real issues out there. So thank you for doing that.
Well, absolutely. And look, you think about some of the races we were involved in. Mays Middleton carried the Texas Women's Privacy Act, the Save Women's Sports law that he carried for college 2 years ago, and a variety of other issues. And so we've been able to see these elected officials and candidates up front and see how they're going to do in leadership positions and really pass some big bills, right? But there are some local candidates that we've developed relationships and confidence in that we endorsed. I will say overall we endorsed, I think, 89 candidates and 84 of them won. That is a 94% win percentage. Now in contested races, because some of those people weren't contested, our win rate was 86%, which I still think is pretty strong. And not that we're trying to take too much credit. A lot of that is because those candidates worked really hard or they had some momentum going into it. But we are very selective. We probably turned away another 100 requests for endorsements because we wanted to prioritize certain races that we thought were valuable to the type of work that we do. We didn't endorse in a lot of federal races because that's really not where we're involved, but we did endorse in some, like John Bunk, who's headed to a runoff and almost got 50% for Wesley Hunt's seat, and a few others. But we go through that process. It's there's a lot of pieces and a lot of steps to our process. We try to be very thorough, and many of those issues and values we work on are very close, if not directly aligned to the same principles and values that Republican and conservative voters are looking for. So that's where we spend a lot of our time. But we also try to help educate people about the process, the importance of voting, where to go, all of that, providing voter ratings for candidates when we're not involved in endorsing those races through iVoter Guide. So we're very much aware of the importance of the process and what it takes to some degree for people to win. And people say it's not really a good idea to endorse in Republican primaries. It can be a little bit risky, but we often feel like, look, we're here to try to help people make good decisions. And if we've got information to share that relates to that, that's typically when we get involved one way or another. And, look, I don't know what you may know this stat. There seemed like there were so many candidates. Some races had 10, 12, 15. I think that's encouraging, when you think about the values that many of those candidates care about, while it creates a lot more activity and so on. I think it's healthy that people want to get engaged more and they want to put their name on the ballot.
Yeah. We rarely have bad candidates. Like, we have decent or better candidates all the time. Like, I'm talking about just people running. We have bad candidates once in a while here and there, like, oh God, we don't want that person. But most of the time, any of these candidates, we're like, yeah, that person is going to stand with us when it comes to Women's Privacy Act. People, things like that. They will stand with us. That's very encouraging for the Republican Party, for the state to say, we're going to have some good people running. Because it takes a lot for someone to run, financially, physically, time-wise, and mostly, just a lot of damaging to each other during primary elections. So,
oh my goodness,
people,
some of the mailers out there, people, come on.
So I understand it. So I get it. I'm glad we have a good bench of people who are running for even the smallest races from precinct chairs. I send out text messages for precinct chairs from my personal campaign because there's like two, three people running against some of the really good precinct chairs that I know personally. So from that level all the way to Senate race, we have great candidates. So we're blessed to have that.
Yeah, well, on to May for a lot of runoff elections. Republican Party Texas Convention is when and where?
June second week, 11 to 13 in Houston, and the senatorial or county conventions happens in March 28th, the Saturday, and the precinct conventions are happening since yesterday. So
yeah, many of them are this weekend too. I know where I live in Williamson County, that's where they're going to be held. Go to what's the website for
TexasGOP.org. Everything is there. The very top of the site, you have two buttons that says senatorial conventions, county conventions, precinct conventions, all of those good stuff. Everything is there. Script is there. How to become a delegate. All of that good stuff is all published. Please take a look at it. TexasGOP.org.
Great. Hey, listen, fascinating night. A lot of data still to take a look at, but a lot of interest on Texas. There is no doubt when we have our elections and the outcomes not only impact our state, they are national significance. Okay, real quick, you were with the president. You were at his event in Corpus last week. How was that?
It was amazing, as usual. I mean, this is probably my fifth or sixth event with him. A couple of them in Texas, some of them out of state. Every event, it's just people are just so excited, right? And then he comes in and he has all the jokes. I can't believe that. Within about 6 hours from that time is when we went to war with Iran.
Isn't it striking? Wow, no doubt.
Yeah, and he was joking about random things and making fun of people, and then he can switch gears like that. Then comes to Whataburger, talk to people. Then goes to Mar-a-Lago, have party, then go out and make sure that our world is safer. So it's an amazing guy. I mean, so I don't care what people say about him. He is doing the work that we elected him to do.
He is versatile. There is no doubt. And the guy just seems to work around the clock. President Trump, we feel, has been doing a fantastic job and is going to be a player in some of these elections. It appears moving towards the runoff in May and probably going into November as well. More that we could talk about. We'll have you back again soon as we get further down the road in the election process. But Abraham George, thank you for being our guest today on the Texas Values Report.
Well, thank you for having me, sir.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple of minutes as he exits our Zoom room and break down a couple of other races that I think we got a little bit more involved in further down the ticket. And I can't get to all of them. Well, I could if we went for an hour and a half on the show, but I'm not going to go that long. I've got my sheet here too. I'm trying to look at a couple of races that I think that were significant, that maybe there was a little bit more attention. We got in one of these races a little bit later. Texas Railroad Commission race. Jim Wright is the incumbent, and Beau French is going to a runoff against him in that race. I just saw a graphic up for Candy Noble. That race got a lot of attention. Speaking of a lot of mail pieces coming in the mail, some that were a little nasty, folks. Come on. Let's make sure that we rely on facts here. But Candy Noble did end up with, I think, about or around 52%. She's the incumbent. She's the author of the 10 Commandments bill. She's authored 2 different pieces of pro-life legislation. She's fantastic. And look, I know people have got different opinions in that Collin County area. I would love to have a conversation with you just to get some perspective on that, because I think she's done some absolutely incredible work. But, she did her work. She got challenged. She, showed up and did get enough votes to win the nomination and carry forward to November. I'm not sure she's got an opponent in November. Cheryl Bean, who is the wife of our board member for Texas Values, John Bean, she got like 57, 58%. There was like 5 or 6 people in that race up in Tarrant County. Great job. Congratulations, Cheryl Bean. So excited for her. This is her second time around. She ran for Texas House in an adjacent House seat last term and just barely missed the nomination. So she, put her cowboy boots on and got back in there again. And she's she's a joy to be around. Always a lot of positive energy, a lot of optimism, and a tough worker. She's going to be fantastic to have at the Texas Capitol. I mentioned John Bunk earlier, one race that we lean into a little bit more and create a little bit more visibility about at the congressional level. He did not win 50+1, but got pretty close. That race is headed to a runoff, and I don't think there were like 10 or 12 people in that race. I got to go look and see who the other person was. Shelley De Zavalis, I think, may have gotten second place. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's headed to a runoff, but John Bunk's got quite the lead going into that, or it did, for this last night. He got the endorsement for President Trump. I was at an event when that got announced with Senator Cruz in Houston. That was a lot of fun. Try to go down the list here about some of the races. No surprise, Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick easily won re-election or nomination for re-election. Maybe there was some notable numbers. I don't really think there were any. Not to diminish any of those candidates. I'm just saying I don't think anybody got above 10 or 12%. I'll look at I may have it right here. Hold on. Governor's race on the Republican side. Did anybody? Well, you've got, Doc Chambers. That's right. There was some chatter about him, 11.14% with the numbers that I had. Okay. I think that's notable. And then Evelyn Brooks, former State Board of Education member, got 2%. Everybody else was 1 or less. No swipe at our friend, some of our friends that have run in these races. I'm thinking of the lieutenant governor's race. I don't think I've got that one in front of me. But okay. And so back to our sheet, our endorsement sheet. David Cook picks up that seat in the Texas Senate race, District 22. That was the seat that was held by Brian Birdwell, who's now on his way for confirmation to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War, whatever phrase they're using. Cason Huddleston, in the State Board of Education District 9 race, wins that nomination. He clinches it without a runoff. I think it's the first time that he's run. Really excited for him. Tiffany Nelson, her husband, is an associate pastor out at Grace Church in the Woodlands. Near the Woodlands, our good friend Steve Riggle pastors that church. Julie Pickering did win. I don't think she had any opposition, but we did endorse her. Couple of other races where there was a challenger. Caroline Harris Davila is going to win re-election for that seat. Ellen Troxclair, state representative who carried the What is a Woman bill. I do think she had a primary challenger, and I think she won pretty convincingly. Armin Mazzani up in Tarrant County. That was an open seat. I forget who vacated that seat to open it. Was it Tenderholt? Was it the other seat? All right, or was that? No, I think that might have been Nate Schatzline's seat. Nonetheless, he wins that race. I think there was more than one person in the race, and he won the seat though. Former mayor or council member, mayor of Keller, I think Armin Mazzani. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. See if there was a couple of other races. Mike Alcott had a challenger, but it was nowhere close. We endorsed him. He wins re-election. Same with Andy Hopper. Try to think of a couple of other notables on here where there was a primary challenger and the person we endorsed won without any real, tightness in the race. Will Metcalf up in Texas House member up in the Montgomery County area. I was trying to see if there was another race. One of the candidates we endorsed, Rhonda Ward, did not win. That was one of the few races where a candidate we endorsed came up short, probably a little bit shorter than I think a lot of people thought. But I think one of the biggest stories last night and upsets, and, Abraham George is the party chairman for all Republicans, so I didn't expect or push on him to make comments. But Steve Toth, a current Texas House member, defeating an incumbent congressional member, Dan Crenshaw, and they're still counting some ballots, as I understand, in Harris County. I don't know what's been happening there, but it seems pretty safe to say that Toth is going to win, and it's going to be by 15%, if not more. I mean, just a flat landslide, and, I'm going to try to be respectful since the election is over and you don't have to spike the football too much, but that's a big margin for an incumbent member of Congress. For someone like Dan Crenshaw, who was widely popular for a while, but fell out of favor with President Trump. They had some conflicts from time to time, and I don't think Crenshaw said some real nice things about the president. But not to mention, in our history, Dan Crenshaw has been an LGBT supportive member of the House even before he ran. We were concerned that might be the case, not real strong on some of our issues, and oftentimes he would talk about it publicly, or you'd hear one thing publicly and something privately. Not a good situation for us and having faith in someone like that, but you didn't see us talking a lot about him because I think oftentimes he would vote pretty, consistently on some of our issues, but other times not. Not somebody we thought was reliable. That's why it wasn't too hard for us to endorse Steve Toth, who's helped pass some very meaningful values and conservative legislation at the Texas Capitol. So, and I don't know what that district looks like off the top of my head. I imagine he's got a pretty strong pathway to winning in November as well. You can't take anything for granted, though. Let me see. Some of these Supreme Court races, I don't think they had challengers. Hey, my good friend Victor Carrillo, who's going to be Justice of the Peace Precinct 2 in Rockwall County. We endorsed in some races. He's a former statewide elected official. He was on the Railroad Commission many years ago, but now is up in the Rockwall area trying to stay close to his family and grandkids and not have to come to Austin when he doesn't have to. So that's fun for him. Tim O'Hare, county judge, won re-election. Try to see a couple of other notables here that I might be missing that got a little bit of discussion and attention. Let me look at our congressional rates. Not a shock, but maybe a little bit surprising that Mark Teixeira won not even just 50+1, but 60%, and with like 10 or 12 people in that race. We had endorsed our good friend and longtime supporter and activist and former chairman of the Federal Election Commission, Trey Traynor. But we did meet with Mark Teixeira before the race. He had sought our endorsement. Just didn't know him that well, and we felt more confident in Trey Traynor's history and work with us. But Mark Teixeira wins that strongly, and he'll, I imagine that's a pretty strong Republican district going into November. But I did text him a week or so ago and look forward to staying in touch with him. Jessica Hart-Steinman, a good friend of ours that worked for American First Policy Institute. She worked for Senator Ted Cruz. I think she was a part of the President Trump's administration during his first term, and maybe recently, I forget. Some of the roles that she had. She wins without a runoff for Congressional District 8 up near the Montgomery County area and some other areas there. I think we endorsed her husband, too, for county clerk, Brandon Steinman. So a lot of good folks on this list. See if there was one other Senate or House race that I'm thinking of that might have had a little bit of competition or interest as I'm going down the line here. Jeff Leach had a little bit of a spirited opponent, but I think he won with pretty strong numbers, and we have worked with him quite a bit over the years. Let me go back to the Attorney General's race. Okay, it's going to get a lot of attention moving forward. Will it get overshadowed a little bit by the Senate race? Maybe, but I think there are a lot of people on the national level that like to dabble in Texas politics or pay attention, and I saw some of these comments last night. Who is Mays Middleton? And I'm like, you need to talk to me more if you don't know who he is. Because I try to stay connected with our national friends and other leaders to keep them, apprised of what's going on in Texas, particularly when we get to elections in the legislative session, because we're around these people all the time, right? And some of them knew him, some didn't. I think some of them, I've worked a lot with Chip Roy. I think I'm going to select him. And I'm not criticizing that. I get it. They're sort of in a different playing field, and so they probably interact with him a little bit more as a national organization. But, this is a guy, Mays Middleton, was all over the place, all over the state, and he got an early start. I think during the end of the regular session in May, he announced that he was running for Attorney General. When it became clear, more clear that Paxton was going to challenge Cornyn, he was ready to step into that. He got off to a strong start, picked up a lot of endorsements early. Mays Middleton did. And it wasn't until, I don't even remember when it was, at some point last year, Chip Roy decided to get in, and Aaron Wright's just before that. And so that early start that he got not only helped him with endorsements, gave him more time to travel around the state, really one of the few candidates getting any attention in that race. And then it got a lot more competitive. I do think there was some expectation. Chip Roy's been in the national level in Congress for a while. He worked for Ken Paxton, from what I hear from Aaron Wrights and others. Not so sure that time, with Paxton ended so well, but nonetheless, Chip Roy worked for Senator Ted Cruz, and I believe early on in his career he did spend some time with John Cornyn in that office, and so not a surprise that he'd have that visibility, but and he did some had some good fundraising early on. But, you got to work the whole state. And if you put that work in, if you go around the state and you've got meaningful legislation that you've passed, like the Texas Women's Privacy Act, which Mays Middleton led that effort. And listen, I'm just going to step back for a second. Not only did Mays Middleton lead the effort for, a major piece of legislation, the Texas Women's Privacy Act, I mean, he carried and willed that thing over the finish line. There were some people, and I'm not going to name names, okay, but some elected officials that were Republican that were ready for that issue just to be left, alone and never picked up again. And he said, absolutely not. We're getting this done. It didn't get done in the regular, took 2 special sessions. There was a lot of support. Governor Abbott was on board, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and then you may recall or not that Speaker Dustin Burrows gave a very impassioned speech during the second special session and specifically said the Women's Privacy Act was going to get done, even though Ken King wasn't a big fan of it, the chairman of House State Affairs. And so, Mays Middleton had to navigate all of that and lead the effort to victory. Okay. And look, I'm going to tell you, I've been, doing this work since 2007. It's very important when you decide or when that decision is made, who's going to carry a major piece of legislation, because not just anybody can get these type of bills done. That member has to be sold out. They have to have other leadership qualities. They got to be able to put together a coalition, and they've got to help navigate the process, know when to move, know when to reassess, and they got to develop relationships with other elected officials and leaders. You name it. There's so much that goes into it. And look, that's a big reason why Mays Middleton got the endorsement of Riley Gaines, because she could see him involved in the Save Women's Sports issue and then the Texas Women's Privacy Act. Brooke Slusser, former collegiate athlete from the state of Texas, and many others down the line. I'm not going to list all of his endorsements here again. You can see the information on our website. But if you want to know who Mays Middleton is, go to our website. We got a lot of great information. We lined that up months ago because we knew some people may not have knew him, or we're going to look a little bit closer and have more interest. That information's there on txvaluesaction.org. And listen, we spent time working with Chip Roy over the years, and we had endorsed Mays long before Chip got in. We still think, though, once Chip got in, that Mays Middleton is the better leader and the better fit for this office. We'll get into more details as we move forward and the difference between the two candidates in that race. But it is very important. The Attorney General's race and that seat in that office is one of the most important, not only in the state, but in the entire country. Oftentimes, the Attorney General in that office leads other state attorney generals to get involved and to coalition together on major issues and major pieces of legislation and litigation as well. But you got to have all the tools, right? You got to be able to navigate putting together a team, have the commitment to enforce these laws, be out in front of the public, be able to communicate on social media, be able to know that, to anticipate some of the enforcement issues that are going to come up and how to navigate those different things, and how to be accessible and be grassroots. I mean, the Attorney General's office is different than a House or Senate member, but it's very much come. And, Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott can take some credit from that, of being so accessible for people that understand what that role is. It's not some far-off lawyer that nobody can get close to and understand. A part of legal advocacy has become, for many years, being accessible to the public, helping the public understand a lot of these court issues and what's really getting down, and really, getting them down to something simplistic that people can understand, boiling it down and using language and phrases that people understand what's going on. So listen, I wonderful night for Mays Middleton to come out in first place, very significantly in first place, but that doesn't mean the race is over or you can just count on that and mail it in. A lot of work they're going to be doing and a lot of talk about it. And we're not opposed to having conversations with people about Chip Roy, but we made our decision back in July, and we're even more committed to it than we were before. That probably doesn't sound right. It's not like there was any difference then. Okay. I'm just saying, my point is, now that it's down to 2, doesn't change for us. If anything, we realize now the opportunity is even greater and closer to the finish line as far as our confidence in endorsing Mays Middleton and that he's the best candidate for this position. And I think a lot of people will come to that same conclusion soon. I saw a lot of people on social media last night saying, oh, well, Aaron didn't win, I'm going to go vote for Mays, or I like this other candidate, that person's not in, so I'm going to go vote for Mays next time around. We'll see. It's going to be real interesting, and to see if other, notable figures, elected or not, get involved in this race that were not in before, when you had, 4 strong candidates that, sort of had their own followings going into this. It's going to be real interesting, and it's not long from now, okay? 2 months away, like the last week and a half or so, right around that time, May 18th through 26th, early voting. I think main election day may be May 28th. We'll check some of those dates for runoff elections. So we're not done with you yet. You got to vote again soon, and we'll be irritating you as well. I don't apologize for sending out a lot of emails and reminders either. Okay, I will say it's not our intention to upset you or to irritate people. It's to get your attention. And we know sometimes it can take 10, 12 times touching people, if you will, connecting them for them to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that, or I'm going to send a donation, or I'm going to go to the ballot box and cast my vote. So that should tell you that's how important we know it is to vote and how committed we are to do our job to get it done. It's not our job for you to sort of like us based on the amount of emails we send. It's our job to get the most people to the polls and to maximize that time. And if you're one of our supporters, to feel like we did your job, that there's no way you could have not known that there was an important election, and there's no way you could have not known we had some endorsements to make it easier for you to make those selections. So if somehow we missed you, let us know. We'll send more emails next time, okay? We'll see how that goes. All right, well, listen, we should find out from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals a decision on the Texas Ten Commandments decision very soon. Could be this week, could be next week. I don't know when it's going to happen, but based on them already deciding in the Louisiana case, I got to believe that Texas case is coming up very soon. But in the meantime, that's only 25 school districts that can't put those posters up right now. The other 1,175 school districts in Texas have every legal right, and really they're obligated to put those up based on the state law that is enforced against them. Hey, we got a great event coming up in Fort Worth and Tarrant County, May 16th, Saturday night. We're going to be putting up a link to register for that very soon. Check for that. Check for us to announce who that speaker is going to be. Could be some other people there. Probably be a little bit of interest on elections, since that's the Saturday before early voting starts on Monday for the runoff election. And so, hey, if you didn't vote during this cycle, okay, I'm not going to beat you up, but put it on your calendar for the runoff elections. Inevitably, that number goes down a little bit of the people that come to the polls. It doesn't have to, though. Okay, more people could show up. Let's see if we can get there. Let's see if we can turn that around a little bit. Hey, if you see value in our work, please consider making a donation to txvaluesaction.org. If you go to that website, txvaluesaction.org, donations to Texas Values Action are not tax deductible, but we are a nonprofit organization. And those donations are confidential, just like a 501c3. But in order for us to do the unlimited lobby and advocacy work, and for us to endorse candidates, the IRS does not allow those donations to be tax deductible. But I tell you what, that money goes a lot further a lot of times. And between now and May, we're going to need some really big resources. Please consider making that donation to TexasValuesAction.org at our website, to Texas Values Action at TexasValuesAction.org. That's the website. One is the name of the group. The other one's the name of the website. Okay, did you catch that? I'm trying to help you all out here. Make sure I'm doing my job the right way. I love election nights. Okay, it's so fun to just see, but it is stressful. You're trying to figure out, did you pick the right person? Are they going to win? What's going to happen now? Good Lord, though. The videos that are already out there about James Tallarico are just, it's striking and fascinating. But, if people didn't know who he was before, they're about to find out. And I don't think they're going to be too impressed. But that's who the Democrats have picked. We're going to see what happens. Republicans are going to finish up picking their candidates. And it's going to be real interesting as we go in November. Hey, pray for our country and our military servicemen and their women and their families as our nation tries to address some of these issues in the Middle East. And pray for our president and our other elected officials that have been a part of these efforts, and try to keep them safe and minimize as much damage and loss of life. It's nothing that anybody feels good about. We know we have to expect those things are going to happen, but it's because we're hoping for a greater good. So keep them in your prayers, and keep the city of Austin here in your prayers. Difficult, just awful night a couple of nights ago in downtown Austin, a place I have been hundreds of times over the years, and I think's really got people very concerned, upset, and just really worried about not being able to have some sense of public safety. I don't know what this guy's motivations are. Certainly seems to be some evidence that suggests that there's a terrorism element. There's sort of this anti-American, maybe anti-Christian and radical Muslim aspect of it. We'll see what plays out as more information comes forward. But, just an awful loss of life that we're seeing and for the victims. So be in prayer for them. And so, hey, thanks for engaging with us. And if we need to do a better job of how we get you election results and resources before the election, please let us know. We know this is a very important part of what we do, but we know there are a lot of voices and groups and mailers and text message and all this stuff can kind of, drown some things out. So let us know if there's more that we could do to improve on our work. I tell you, one way we can improve is if we've got more resources to hire people to help us with some of our work. You can make that happen by making a donation at txvaluesaction.org. Hey, that wraps up this special segment of the Texas Values Report brought to you by txvaluesaction.org. You protect us, you support us. That's how together we can protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.